Essentially, Kristen, want to put the slide? We haven't quite up. Okay. We're going to take an hour to look at our traditional view of our be looking back next to yours or everything. Just start all that we recognise the next hour and nothing. So I'm going to leave the slide. We wanted just to put up to start by doing a quick look back when sometimes we forget to kind of congratulate ourselves for what we've done. And when we were looking at this, we thought, well, what were we aiming to achieve in 2025? And what we originally said, what we were trying to do in 2025 was to embed stable and reliable organizational structures and processes. We had in our mind, okay, 2026 is the start of the next strategic direction. So we want to really invest in building capacity and capability in 2025 to be prepared to move into that next strategic period with a lot of confidence. So we were really thinking this is a year of preparation. You know, it's not the big ambitious year. It's really setting the foundations, and that our ambition would kick off in 2026. But then earlier this week, or this week, the CODIR took an opportunity to look back at 2025 to check in on what did we achieve, what we said we were going to achieve. And actually what we realised and what became really apparent was that we not only kind of accomplished that setting the foundation for MSF UK, which is really what we set out to do, we definitely got there. We've got really strong foundations to move into the next strategic period. But in fact, we delivered more than ever and better than ever on our core work, even in 2025, a much higher level of ambition than we were expecting. And we achieved much more than we anticipated, even before we launched into our new strategy. So it's almost like we jumped the gun a little bit, which is not a problem at all. So we can see this looking at this highlight screens. So immediately we've got that amazing income estimate. It's still an estimate. It's not yet final, but we're imagining will come out at the end of the year at about £103 million. That's 9% higher than our original target at the beginning of 2025, which is enormous. And it's the first time we've ever broken that £100 million barrier. And in fact, you know, the increase has gone up year on year, and now we're above £100 million, and we're definitely aiming to stay there and continue. So huge congratulations, obviously, to the fundraising and comms teams who played such a huge role, but everybody else as well who was part of that. In particular, there's the enabling functions teams, as we're now sort of calling them, who delivered their work in support of this incredible growth. So to make all of this happen, to be able to raise that level of money, you need to do a lot of recruitment. We know we've been doing a huge amount of recruitment in the last year. You need to be paying just the bills, tracking the budgets, dealing with all our IT queries, managing the wonderful new office and giving us that space to work in. So none of these results we've had looking at this list would have been possible without all that routine work that's been going on in enabling functions as well, which really helped us to get where we got in 2025. When we were discussing amongst ourselves in the CODIR, we picked out a few other bits and pieces that we felt really marked 2025 for us. It's not exhaustive. Obviously, there's that support to our colleagues in Gaza that we've been doing through our campaigning work, through our comms work, through all our advocacy work, but also through some of the basic work about getting some of our colleagues out of Gaza, getting them to study for the leap. And we've really sort of shared our approach and our knowledge and everything we've learned with the rest of the movement. So I think we've been seen as a key player around Gaza in 2025. A lot of contribution that happened in the Manson units listed there. I'm not going to go into detail. In the IMS team, getting UK contracted IMS out to all the operational directorates, and actually just delivering really on a lot of our core work. So, you know, we always look at the stuff we said we plan to do, and 95% of our core activities were delivered in 2025 according to plan, which is, again, I think, you know, quite exceptional. not going to go down into too much detail, but there was a distinguishing feature of 2025, a lot of firsts, apart from being the first time we made over £100 million. It was the first full year in post for the majority of the CODIR, so the directors that you all know and love. And actually, I can say I really have appreciated having a full year of stability of leadership and the unity of that team. We've already come together as a leadership team, and it's made such a huge positive contribution, I think, to MSF UK and really helped me in my work. It was also the first year, as Asan reminded us, of the new programs unit, the first full year of the programs unit, and the official launch of MSF Ubuntu as an operational directorate. And also the start of MSF WACA's UK Migrant Mental Health Project. So a lot of firsts happened this year. All of this stuff happening, the first successes that happening in 2025 really sort of prove to us that we're ready to take on the challenge of the next strategic period that we've designed for ourselves. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Kristen, who's going to talk you through it.
So I'm going to do this at pretty high speed because we have, of course, talked about our strategy quite a lot over the last year. It was one of the big accomplishments of last year is to put together a strategy. But we really wanted to just touch on it to contextualize then the more detailed plans that Natalie will talk us through going through from there. So we had a lot of briefing sessions. I won't bore you with the detail, but maybe just a reminder that it's worth recapping and for any new staff or recently joined, or for those that didn't come to some of the briefing sessions, that we have these longer term aspirations and they've really crystallized around a mission, vision, and a culture that we want for MSF UK. So that mission is taken directly from the Articles of Association. It's a variation on the MSF Charter, and it was agreed when MSF UK launched over 30 years ago. So that's something that we recognise that's at the core of the social mission of the organisation. The vision that's in that middle bubble there really sets out how we'll meet our obligations as a section of the MSF movement, which is that core foundational element of this glorious sort of multi-headed hydra of a movement that we're part of. And so it sets out our ambition to be a reliable partner, and whether that be as a fundraising section, recruiting IMS in our public communications and advocacy, or collaborating on movement-wide operational priority areas. But then we have to have the right culture to be able to achieve our strategic aims. So this culture that we've set for ourselves is setting an expectation for how we'll go about achieving our vision, that we will be committed, that we will be bold, that we will be human in our actions. And those values will be elaborated as we go on over the course of the year. We'll start to see those be a more active part of our conversation, coming through in the learning and development curriculum and integrated into how we talk about ourselves, how we think about our work, how we model it, how we behave together. So I have to click the button as well as turn the page and talk. Maybe one too many things for me today. But so this should look familiar. It's been on the wall in the office. It's been around a few times. These are the strategic and goals and objectives. And these strategic goals and objectives haven't changed since we last shared them with you. So I won't run through these in detail. But the 5 whats of income generation, bearing witness, workforce, research and innovation, and program support are supported by then the 3 hows of working as an association, engaging in effective partnerships, and taking a transformational approach to improving our enabling functions, as well as our overall efficiency and effectiveness as an organization. So the final formal edited version of this, which has been wordsmithed and be beautifully presented, will be published in February. But in the meantime, there's a version on the portal that is the same version that we used in our annual planning, or our biannual, the planning. We have to change our language.
This is direction, that's the plan.
The planning. In the planning. So I think it's worth checking and just reminding that this is all linked to a strategic financial direction, which sits underneath this and gives us some guidelines. It frames the financial principles that will help us understand how to make investment choices over the next several years, and making choices not just about what we will do, but how much we'll do, and also how much we're willing to invest in different areas, and achieving the right balance across our activities. And so Natalie will touch on that a little bit more when we speak about how this direction becomes a plan in the next section. But the other big thing that's been happening behind the scenes with the strategic direction is thinking about, well, how are we going to know when we've achieved these big statements that are a little bit themselves by nature, motherhood and apple pie? And so we've been bringing together a strategic monitoring framework to understand how our choices are worked out and how we're achieving the impact we want as we go through the strategic period. So it's not a precisely straightforward science because not everything that we do is quantitative. Not everything can be measured in a number. And so we've opted for a more flexible framework that allows us to think about what we see and feel as well as what we measure, and also that will be adaptable over time. The aim is that the metrics will help us have meaningful discussions. So it's not sort of a pass or fail measure. It's not a KPI. It's something that will help us drive the right conversation at the right time to understand if we're achieving what we want and if we need to adjust or change or pivot over that time. So we won't report these all the time. It has different levels. It's almost like one of those rolly window blinds. So in departments, many departments have dashboards. Those will continue to be developed over time. Third year, we'll have a discussion of a set of those metrics, and then a different set will be kind of rolled up and reported to our board. Really, again, about trying to have the right conversation at the right time, make us pause, think, are we on track? Are we not on track? And so you'll start to see more of that discussion of metrics and see, feel, and measure coming through in the next few years. Alongside sort of some focus on progressing toward a strategic monitoring framework, we're also going to be tracking some organizational health elements. There are the strategic choices we've made, but then there are also the elements that are important to every organization. So staff engagement, finance, health and safety, information security, among others. Those are also really important things that we check in on in understanding if our organization is healthy and in a fit state to be able to achieve our strategy. So with that little bit of framing, I'm going to turn over to Natalie to talk about what it actually means in practice.
Yeah, so all back again on the same page about our strategic goals, what we're aiming to achieve over the next 6 years. Now we need to talk about how we started planning for the next couple of years to do this, to actually put these strategic goals into action. So a bit of nitty gritty coming out. However, we're not going to go into tiny detail. There are a huge number of spreadsheets that the planning team can share with you if you want that level of detail, but I'm not going to try and fit them onto some slides here. I'm going to focus a bit first on the investments and changes that are planned for the next 2 years. So really kind of the new things or the different things or the things we're doing more of. Sort of the key sort of markers of what, what we're moving forwards towards our strategic direction. And as Kristen mentioned, we use the steers in the strategic financial direction to guide our consideration about where to make investment decisions in the plan. So we know what direction we're going in, but how much do we want to do in terms of that direction was guided by our strategic financial direction. When we did that, three clear themes emerged through the planning process, and these are the activities sort of we've prioritized to fit around these themes. The first one, it's no surprise because we've been talking about it at length, is that we want to continue to grow our income in a sustainable way. So we've done exceptionally well in 2025. We don't want that to be a one-off. We want this to be the start of a sustainable growth that goes on over the next 6 years, that we're growing our income every year, building on our existing success, diversifying our income, and really expanding our reach to more audiences and more people who like to support us. Secondly, we tried to get some real clarity during the planning on why we in MSF UK are doing the things we do in support of the social mission. MSF is a big beast. There are 25, 26 sections. There are now 7 operational centres. There are a lot of branch offices. We need to be quite clear and challenge ourselves about whether we're always the right place for different activities, or whether actually it might be served better somewhere else, or it might be, beneficial for another office to be able to take on some of the activities that we've been doing in the past. And finally, we recognise the need to enable the growth that we're planning by investing in improving the quality of service provided by what we're calling the enabling functions. So not just improving the service, but also pushing for them to be more efficient and effective, because that will then translate across the organisation and it will drive down the risk that we're taking because we're better able to support our activity and we're more not just realistic, but we're more able to be ambitious, knowing that we can support that level of ambition. Next slide. So then go into a little bit more detail, but not very precise detail. There's some different activities that we felt fit into each of these themes. So when we talk about building on success in growing our income sustainably, that includes moving our face-to-face Scotland pilot onto a permanent footing. So last year it was in pilot phase, it worked very well. And so now we're going to make it a permanent activity to have face-to-face in Scotland. We're going to invest in our donor acquisition activities, and that means a significant increase in marketing. So we're really recognising that if we put more money into marketing, we'll get more money back. Reviewing the outcome of our always-on marketing pilot and deciding on the next steps that come from that. And then we were doing that in 2026, extending our winter appeal, enhancing our philanthropy team. You know, it's grown over the years, but now we really need to sort of enhance certain areas of philanthropy teams to get down into the sort of special areas that we want to invest in, and increasing the number of challenge events we run. And you're already seeing the announcements about the various challenge events we're doing. In terms of diversifying our income, we're really focusing on trusts and foundations. We think that's a real opportunity for us in the UK, as well as legacies, which is definitely an opportunity for us in the UK. And they're both areas where we see a significant potential for growth in the UK markets. And as well as taking, which for us might seem a bit more experimental approaches in areas we haven't explored before in MSF UK, although other parts of the movement have been doing them in the past. For example, with merchandising. So yes, you've all seen you can now get an MSF branded hoodie from the MSF shop. We want to sort of, you know, expand that, look into that. And it not only helps us get some income, but it also expands our reach to different audiences and helps us to reach people who might not have heard about our work before. And the same lines, we're gearing up our celebrity engagement, our high profile supporters. I hope you all saw that Lewis Hamilton tweeted to his 42 million followers about us the other day. Instagram, sorry, not Twitter. Don't do Twitter. And we're exploring some virtual challenge events as well. So looking a bit more experimentally about, you know, how we look at that line of our work. Under the heading of expanding our reach, there's a very technical activity, which I'm not sure I entirely understand, around implementing a charitable soft opt-in in our marketing, which apparently due to changes in data protection law means we'll be able to market electronically more freely. Ask the person who knows about that. I can't explain in any more detail than that. And then the remaining items in this heading around public engagement and mobilisation, I'm going to come back to a little bit later because it links to some other parts of our work, not just income. Hold on. Yes, there's a bit more, sorry. The idea is actually for this section of growing our income sustainably, as Kristen mentioned, we are trying to monitor things. We've made these guesses, educated guesses that this is the right area to invest in. But of course, we don't want to just kind of go, that's what we're going to do, and we just do it if it's not paying off. So we can keep a close eye on the performance of these different activities, trying to really measure the optimal investment for the return we're getting or the impact we're having. So that means that actually, even over the next couple of years, we might find ourselves dialing up certain activities or dialing them down because we think they were a good idea, but they're not really working out, or actually going, actually, it was a great idea, let's do more of it. So you still might see some changes in the level of investments around those activities. What we did notice when we talk about the strategic financial direction is we'd set a steer for how much we want to invest in this overall package of growing our income. And in fact, we've ended up investing or plan to invest a bit more than we originally said we would. We can talk a bit about that in more detail, but it's mainly linked to the fact that the results we're already seeing in 2025 are so much higher than we were anticipating. That made us actually satisfied we can move a bit faster with some of this work than we originally envisaged. And so we think, you know, we might even be able to revise up our income forecasts. You know, I'm looking at Alan, who looks a bit nervous about that. But if we invest, we think we can accelerate a little bit some of the investment in some of these areas, rather than just kind of saying, oh, we've done that now, we'll wait a bit and we'll start later on. We can move forwards a bit more quickly than planned. Well, again, we can always see how that goes. Next slide. So I mentioned the public engagement and mobilisation activity. So really a key theme that emerged during the planning process when we were talking about all the different ideas people had was that we could really probably better support activities that involve direct engagement with the public. Whether that be the public on the street, the people we meet at music festivals, the people that come to attend our events, the people that currently support us, or the people that might want to support us, and including the association actually and the Friends of MSF and other groups like that we do come into direct contact with. Today, that activity is a little bit fragmented across MSF UK, or at least spread across quite a lot of different teams. And that's just really a reflection of our growth over the years. You know, 10 years ago, we were a much smaller team and we were doing far fewer activities. And now we have lots more activities and we're a much bigger team, which means that sometimes the activity gets spread out amongst different teams. So we have the public engagement team that sits in the comms department. Their official scope is actually in theory quite limited. And then the team we have with by far the biggest role engaging directly with the public today is the face-to-face team, which sits in the fundraising department. And they did put a proposal in to scale up even further. Then we also have had the temporary position of a campaigns manager sitting in the heart for the last year. The association team who sit, you know, under the general direction, who have plans to expand their associative involvement outside London. You have the Take Action group within the association. You have the community events and tributes team. You have scientific days. All these different activities are bringing MSF UK into direct contact with different audiences and often asking them to take different actions. And there is a bit of a risk of either duplication there or competition or contradiction between the messages passed. It might end up being we're speaking to the same people through different teams in different places, and asking them to take actions that maybe contradict actions we told them to take before. And that can be in person, that can also be digitally as well. You know, if we're asking somebody to do something in person and then they're getting an email later that asks them to do something else or has slightly different messaging, that can create a bit of confusion. Or it's a missed opportunity to amplify the messages, you know, different teams passing the same message. We felt that there was an opportunity there to kind of align a bit more of that work across the organisation. Today, the coordination between these teams is voluntary. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's quite informal. It's quite voluntary. A lot of it is happening. There's a huge willingness to coordinate. And there's a huge amount of coordination happening. But as we are such a big organisation now, it takes a lot of time and energy. And we realised that with the task forces we tried to run last year, to set up the meetings, to set up the right discussions, to get the right people around the table, to make sure we've got the right people in the room every time. It takes a lot of energy, and each time it's a little bit ad hoc. And the thing that really demonstrated that to us in 2025 was the Gaza campaign activity. In the end, it was really highly successful, but it took quite a lot of time to get us all into the same place and to run that strong coordinated campaign. When we did get there, it was massively successful. It really paid off, and it became sort of seen around the movement as kind of almost a blueprint of how you can do it. And I think we learned a lot from that. And we did a lot of direct public engagement through the Gaza campaign activity, but it took a while to get us to the place where we were able to do it. We're not always planning to be running a campaign like that. That was not a one-off, but it's not something we're going to be doing all the time. But we do recognise that partly through that campaign and partly through a lot of our other work, our visibility and our public presence in the UK is bigger than ever. And our ambition can now increase, but that means we need to consolidate and align our activities that relate to directly engaging with, and when needed, to mobilise different audiences as well. Make sure we have clearer, quicker messages, less duplication, higher impact through that, so people aren't having to kind of try and work out what we're saying about what's happened in Gaza or what we're saying about what's happened in Sudan. It's all there, and we all move it forwards. It also speaks to a push we heard very clearly from our association, particularly at the General Assembly last year, for them to be involved in mobilisation, for them to be able to mobilise behind MSF's messages and positions, and to be more engaged with some of what we're trying to say and do. So this diagram on the screen, it's not an organogram. It's an attempt to try and illustrate how we see this all fitting together in the future. We try to look at all the different teams we see working in this area, and how they can organise themselves to coordinate together, and how we can take advantage of some of the key groups we've got in MSF UK to help with that coordination. We'll start transitioning to this model. There's a few key roles that we'll need to recruit to really support this model. So one of them is called Strategic Coordinations Coordinator there, but it'll be Strategic Communications Planner, sorry. And there's a bit of reorganisation of the public engagement team, which will now be called the Public Engagement and Mobilisation Team, and will be a bit expanded, and their remit will be a bit expanded.
Yes.
And they'll play a really key role in sort of bringing some of those activities together. It will take time. It's a phased approach. Later on, I'll mention a little bit about how we're attempting to more clearly define our strategic positioning at MSF UK on some of these big key topics, so that we're not asking people to try and work out themselves how MSF is positioning themselves, that there'll be some guidance coming from the CODIR about what we want to say about certain things as well. Right. Next big key theme, the social mission. Turning to that, there were quite a number of proposals for new activities that fit in this area. And we did actually routinely challenge all of them about why we should accept them into plan, given that we do have that steer in our strategic financial direction about inflation-only growth in this area, because we want to make sure that MSF UK is not doing things just because we can afford to do them, and that other parts of the movement are able to do things as well. And sometimes things could be better done in other parts of the movement. So there was quite a lot of challenge around a lot of the proposals, but there were three key different justifications to deviate from that, and to accept some of these new proposals into the plan, and to invest into some of these proposals. So the first area is where we really saw that there was a strong alignment with our strategic direction. And in that, we've really called out a research and innovation goal, mentioned that MSF UK, in particular through the Manson unit, has a strength in this area, which means we are the right part of the movement to take on some work around research and innovation, because we really know what we're doing in the UK around that. So fitting into there was really developing MSF UK's role as a research support hub for the movement. So that means developing sort of robust research, study monitoring, administration processes, which promote good clinical practice across the movement. It's a clear gap actually today. We have all these MSF teams around the world who are really uniquely placed to conduct very important research that really can improve the lives and the care of people that are too often neglected. But what we realise is most of our MSF teams, they don't have a background in how to do research. They're not researchers, and so they need support to ensure that when they're doing research projects, they're done effectively, but more importantly, ethically, and they're done in collaboration with patients and communities. And so really is an ambition within the Manson unit to develop a research support hub, and we felt that was worth investing in. We also plan to make a small envelope available to continue with a project called Nexo, which some of you will know about, which is again around research and data sharing. It's a project we took over from MSF Japan at the beginning of last year. We wanted to assess the work that had been done and explore if there was any opportunity to take it forwards. We have reached a conclusion that, as originally planned, the project will not carry on, and that's because there's significant data protection obstacles to doing what was originally planned when MSF Japan started the project. However, we do think that there's value within that project. Some of the ambitions
that were originally sort of expressed can maybe be implemented in a slightly different way. So we're investing a bit of money to try and see if there's a different, less ambitious model that can deliver on what we originally tried to achieve with the project. Second justification for why we'd invest is around some activities that we would choose to incubate in MSF UK for a bit of time until we can identify really if there's a clear benefit for the movement in this activity, or until we can hand it over to somebody else in the movement to carry on in the long term. And so within this fits the play therapy activity. So this is part of our inclusive innovation program. So for those of you who used to know it as a sapling nursery, it's now called inclusive innovation. And what the team is doing is trying to develop tools and expertise around play therapy and to support its integration into our routine offer of care of all our operational projects. So when relevant, we can offer play therapy to children who would benefit from it. Currently, our teams don't really know how to do that. So we will invest in this project for a couple of years, 2026, 2027, to allow us to help develop tools and support, by which time our operational teams will no longer need to be accompanied and they can just take that support and tools and just start doing it themselves within their projects. So it's not a long-term plan to continue to support play therapy. It's really an innovative approach for the next 2 years. And then the final justification is where we actually had a clear ask from the movement to do an activity and to invest in an activity. And that's the case for the Digital Archives project, where we were explicitly asked to take this forward in 2026 on behalf of the movement. And Asan can talk to you all about that project in a bit more detail, and it will launch sometime in 2026. At the same time, we did, as I mentioned, try and review all the other activities that we're doing that support the social mission, and we will keep regularly reviewing them to make sure it still always makes sense for them to continue to be within MSF UK, that we've got the level of ambition right around them, and make sure that teams are always looking for appropriate collaborations and partnerships and avoiding duplications within the movement with other parts of MSF and outside MSF as well. And then next slide. So what I've talked about so far has been the sort of new investments, the new activities, some of the changes we're going to be making for the 2026 and 2027 plan. But that doesn't mean we've suddenly stopped doing everything else. And these are the things we're doing now, and everything else would stop, of course. The planning team, as I said, have very detailed spreadsheets listing out about 350 core activities, of which this slide is just a small selection. The idea is to build on the success of 2025 in all of these activities. We're not proposing any decrease. We're not proposing to stop any existing activity that I haven't called out already. And we will be tweaking all of these to try and set a level of ambition within them and deliver on that in 2026 and 2027. And then mention some organizational changes that we're making to support this work, and then we'll finish and vote on some questions. So we did feel that to better support MSF UK in the next strategic period, we needed to adjust a little bit the way we're working at CODIA level, and also the way in which the general direction, so that's me and Kristen, and you'll start hearing that word a bit more, the general direction over the years are supported as well. Because again, our roles have changed over the last few years. We're playing a much more active role in the movement more widely with Ubuntu, but also OCA, with the international platforms, and MSF UK itself is growing as well. Over the last year, what we've been doing is piloting the use of some smaller CODIA subcommittees for specific areas of projects. Because what was happening was you've got an entire CODIA team sitting there. We don't have enough time for all of us to be looking at everything in detail. And so we created these smaller subcommittees, a bit like board subcommittees, for areas where we felt we needed a bit of extra oversight, extra scrutiny, or just more time to understand and support some quality decisions made at CODIA level. These subcommittees have worked out really well. They've been really effective, actually. So moving ahead, we're formalising their existence. And there'll be 3 subcommittees of the CODIA. They're called strategic positioning, finance and income, and enabling functions. There's a bit of a description on the slide about what they'll all do. And I mentioned the strategic positioning group already before, but the idea is that they help make us all better informed. You get the right people in the right room at the right time so that we make quicker decisions. We're not having to kind of stack up the CODIA agenda and people waiting months to get a decision made at CODIA level. We can be making those decisions a bit more nimbly and having those discussions a bit more frequently at the subcommittee level. And so it fits with our principle of subsidiarity, of not everything having to come up to CODIA to come back down again, but back and forth between the teams and the subcommittees. And we also, Kristen and I took ourselves away for an away day a few months ago to reflect a bit on the role of the general direction, so our roles together, and the executive office more broadly. And what we decided is that we're going to transition away from the design of an executive office and move towards something that's a bit more clear and functionally described in terms of a set of units that reports to the general direction, but that link to the whole organisation. You know, the executive office isn't just supporting Kristen and I, they are really sort of supporting the entire organisation in their different roles. So the units, they're up on the screen there, they consist of the current executive office teams, but split out into governance and association, which is led by James Blurring, and planning and accountability, which is led by Jim Ewing. So those two units will now exist as general direction support units. What we've also decided to do is to bring the HARP unit, led by Liz Harding, into this group. And the reason we're doing that is really to reinforce that link between the movement and particularly the International Humanitarian Representation Team, the HRT, of which Liz is a member, and then me as the General Director and the General Direction, because we're responsible for representing and positioning MSF in the UK. So we can work together with the HARP to understand the analysis of what's going on around the world and how it's relevant to the UK, to allow us to better kind of position ourselves towards the government and towards other stakeholders in the UK. The work of these units, as I said, they have cross-organisational remits. So they'll play a key part in ensuring that the whole of MSF UK is well led, is compliant, is resilient, that we're really remaining focused on achieving our purpose across the organisation. And so over the coming months, you will see changes in the terms we're using. We'll gradually retire the executive office designation and start talking more about these specific units and the general direction support units more broadly. And just to say that this new setup is further supported by a new role, which we're calling Chief of Staff, which Joy has kindly agreed to take on. So in the early days, we recognised that Joy will have to play quite a key role as a bit of an air traffic controller here, helping to orient people towards the right person or the right team, because this is a bit of a change in how we organise ourselves. So, you know, if you want something from the general direction, go to Joy and Joy can point you into, actually, that's probably best if you go and speak to James, or that's best if you speak to Jim, or, you know, help point you, or why don't you go and speak to the relevant department or team. It would also help us think about how this is all fitting together, and of course providing that invaluable support to us as we juggle all the demands on our time from MSF UK and the wider movement, which seem to build up every day. I think a victim of our own success at MSF UK is we're getting more and more demands for us to be involved in other parts of the movement, because people like working with us, which is nice, but takes a lot of time. And then, of course, you've got all the other teams who still continue to exist, a bit of reorganisation in some of them, but they will still be sitting within their relevant functional departments. And each department is led by an able and willing director. So we've got Alan for fundraising, Jude for comms, Matt for the Manson unit, Asan for programs, Chris for finance, IT and workplace services, and Greg for people. So at any point you can always, within your team, go and discuss with your director, and your director will be playing a full part in the PODIA as well. Right, last slide. So basically, thanks everyone for taking a bit of time to listen to this, to help us celebrate what we achieved in 2025. to think about, to make sure we all understand what we're aiming to do together for 2026 up to 2031. Really, I'm excited about the new strategic direction, and I'm really, really pleased, and we're really pleased about how that got transformed so smoothly in many ways into some really concrete, tangible, but ambitious plans. I know this is quite a quick run through. The slides are sort of very, very basic, so do take time to ask your own directed questions, to discuss between yourselves, between your teams, within your departments. And don't hesitate to ask for a bit of support or guidance if you, in understanding if there's any questions you have, because I think really 2026 has started already, and we really, really want it to be a success. So thanks to all of you for getting involved. Great. Have you got time for questions? Yeah, got about 15 minutes for questions, comments, thoughts. No questions are stupid questions. Or we can get some time back.
I've got a question about Ireland and the role they're going to play within this.
I completely forgot. Thanks for that. It's a very good question. I meant to start with, just to mention, this is very much the MSF UK plan. Ireland is working on their own, have worked on their own plan for 2026, and Ireland is also, we've just launched a new role of the strategic development lead. So Ireland has been massively successful as well in 2025. Big call out again, their income figures far beyond what they would have even hoped for, and they've recognised that they're playing a very key role in Ireland as quite a large now visible charity in Ireland. And so they really want to spend a bit of time now reflecting on, well, what's our strategic vision for MSF in Ireland? And so we've created a new role of strategic development lead, which has been taken by our very own Jacob Burns. So you won't see him around London anymore because he's moved to Dublin. And he's going to be working with the Irish office to help them think about their own strategic direction moving forwards and how to really lean into all the opportunities we find in Ireland. That work's been going on all year. It's linking very closely to the UK, and we're going to then hopefully in the future be able to bring together the UK and Irish strategies in a more kind of coherent way and be able to talk and share our successes with each other. So while recognizing we're two specific environments, at the same time, we have lots of common work and common ambitions as well. So this year, very specific to UK, I think next year it's going to look very different, and we'll be talking much more about UK and Ireland in certain areas, and then zooming down on the areas where it's specific to Ireland, specific to the UK. But yeah, they had a great year.
No comments online. I think everyone's a bit shy at the moment.
That's fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. The other thing to say is that all the operational centres are just finalising their own strategic plans for the next 6 years. And we've got the Spark, which is a sort of movement-wide collective. It's not a plan so much as a set of collective priorities. And one of the things we've been trying to make sure we do with the UK one is make sure it aligns and is in sync and is really kind of supportive to what the movement is trying to do, and particularly our operational centre partners are trying to do as well. So what I was really pleased by is seeing the results of our planning and then seeing the results of OCA's planning, for example, and seeing how they kind of overlap and they really support each other. So I think that's been really helpful. We all came out in the right place, and we're not kind of disagreeing with each other. So that was nice.
Does our income result compare
With other sections. So we have jumped up the league table. We are now number 5. We have overtaken France, which is huge. I don't think we've ever overtaken France before. We've overtaken the Netherlands.
4, Shona says. Shona says we're number 4 now.
Number 4,
Neck and neck
well,
with Spain.
Spain just
Oh,
nicked us, but I think we can get them. It's not a competition, but
But it very much is.
where we're ranking, so the US clearly is number 1, but they're cheating. Because it's America. Germany is number 2, but I think we're really, and they had a good year as well, but then we have Switzerland. Again, it's Switzerland. There's a lot of rich people in Switzerland. And then Spain, we're about the same level as Spain. But I think what we saw is that our growth, we have one of the biggest growths, which is difficult to do when you're a big fundraising section, to grow even bigger. And I think I think we probably rank as in the big fundraising sections as by having by far the biggest growth in the last year. So that's a great trajectory to be on. Yeah, really good. And Ireland as well had a huge growth. Ireland as a branch office are fundraising more than quite a few sections.
So
So
we had
very impressive.
massive growth last year and a huge amount of potential in that market. Ireland globally has the largest per capita proportionate giving per individual of any country in the world.
wow.
And so a really, really interesting place to fundraise. And a lot of potential there. So something that will be really fun to explore over the next year as they reset their level of ambition and reset their appetite for investment and growth to enable that.
I've got another question about the registration in Gaza and how did we factor that into these plans, and if not, what will happen in the future if we're asked to leave? And
So it didn't factor into these plans because we fundraise for the movement. There is a Gaza regional fund, but it's working across the region, not just specifically in Gaza. We've had this issue of the Gaza registration. Sort of, we've been looking at it for months. We knew it was going to come up. We still don't know now what the outcome will be, whether we'll be able to maintain some form of registration or not. Even without registration, there still are possibilities to keep working in Gaza and in Palestine. It's just in a very slightly different way. So a little bit like the ways we worked in places like Syria in the past, where we won't be able to have any international staff, we won't be able to have any of our own supplies, but there might be ways of supporting other organizations. So I don't think the Gaza registration changes anything about our plans necessarily. I do think what is important though is to be able to be very clear to particularly our supporters that if they want to support Gaza, they can still keep donating money to us, because I think some of them are feeling a little bit like, oh, they understood that we've been kicked out of Gaza, and if they want to support Palestinians, they'll have to donate their money elsewhere. So I do think we need to make sure that messaging is clear that we are going to continue to support Palestinians in one way or another. We just don't know. We can't say exactly how as yet. I think that's quite important. But yeah, I mean, ideally, we would maintain some kind of access to Gaza with international staff and supply, but we'll see how it goes. Good.
Okay.
Great. Thanks. Well, thank you.
For the time.